What is going on, everybody? It is Maxwell with the Virtual World Society podcast, partnering for AWE Vienna in EU, and partnering with AWE for these podcast recordings here with my friend Jeremy Dalton, the man with the beautiful accent and the beautiful face and the beautiful mind, right? Not like the beautiful mind from the movie, because that would mean you were crazy.
Oh, you're on a roll there, Max.
That's
I was
right.
really getting excited. I was feeling myself
sorry.
getting bigged up there.
I'm so sorry. That's right. Let's get that ego back to the growth that I started it with. Jeremy, it's so good to talk to you as always.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for the invite, Max, and looking forward to the chat.
Absolutely. And AWE in Vienna, how are you feeling? What is the energy like this year?
Oh, I'm loving it, and I think I'm really enjoying it because it's not just the Austrian XR community that's here, but we've got communities from Belgium, we've got communities from the Baltics here, and so it's great to see, and Finland as well as here. Hong Kong is here in actually a significant way. They're the titanium sponsors of AWE EU this year. I think there's about 4 branches that are either the Hong Kong government or connected to the Hong Kong government that is here sponsoring AWE at the highest levels today. Which is pretty amazing to see. Usually you see the same old faces or company names on the titanium sponsor list, but not this year at AWE, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's very exciting to see new faces at each different AWE, whether it be EU or Singapore or California, and it is really wonderful. Do you feel like AWE is a big reunion a lot of the time?
Absolutely, and I'm kind of glad that it's not just a reunion, because if it was literally just all of us seeing each other every time and nobody else, it would kind of give you a negative impression of the growth of the XR industry. But thankfully, it is indeed a great occasion to meet with old faces. You know, you and I have met at AWE US, and we met at events before that, of course. But we get to see new people as well. We get to see new entrants to the industry. We get to see people from different companies, different sectors, different organizations that are trying things out, that are testing new hardware, new software solutions. And I really enjoy that aspect of it, being able to meet new people, as well as catch up on all times with old people too.
Yeah, and you're a really incredible asset to the industry, being a historian of all of these different technologies, especially in XR and virtual reality. I learn something new every single time I talk to you, such as, technically VR has existed for long before we even had electricity, technically. And with all of that knowledge, have a lot of people been approaching you throughout the years, asking to share that knowledge so they can kind of get that appreciation, or maybe some new ideas for businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. So the beautiful thing is, when I gave that talk at AWE US 2024, I was so fascinated by the history, and as people may have heard from my last episode that we did at AWE US, Max, I was talking about my historical collection. So I have in London a garage full of historical XR memorabilia from the 1800s and onwards. I've got books, I've got headsets, I've got press photographs, pins, t-shirts, got the works. And it's just such a beautiful, rich history. I wanted to talk about it. After that talk in AWE US, I got approached by the Baltic XR community. So just last week, I was in Tallinn, which is a beautiful city in Estonia, and got to talk about the rich history of the technology there too. And everyone was very appreciative of it. Most people that I spoke to at that conference and here today at AWE still don't really appreciate the history of the technology beyond the last 10 years. And so I'm really quite excited to be able to tell people about it and sort of bring it to life, and watch the amazement build in their face as they think, did I make a mistake saying 1800s in virtual reality? It just doesn't compute. And that sort of mix of confusion and excitement is always something that I quite like seeing and explaining. So very happy to be talking about it for sure.
Yeah, and I love to hear about it because there is a lot of fascination that goes with it, but also a lot of lessons learned of what has worked in the past and what has people's reaction been in the past in regard to virtual reality. And now that we've started to study it a little bit more and create a lot of this research, what have you noticed from your studies and from researching modern day virtual reality and its implementation in kind of our everyday lives?
Yeah, so One of the latest studies that we've been involved in was actually with the Ministry of Internal Affairs in Lower Saxony, Germany. And we did a report with them and the University of Münster on the value of virtual reality for remote collaboration over and above video conferencing. And we found some really interesting results. We found that there was a 16% improvement in communication from using VR to liaise with someone versus just seeing them on a video conferencing screen.
Right.
We found there was a 11% higher satisfaction with workshop results that you conducted in, or you received after conducting it in virtual reality. There was a 15% greater comfort in a VR meeting, which is a really odd result. You might think it's far more uncomfortable in virtual reality. But actually this is psychological comfort, not physical comfort. So the idea being you can delegate your look to your avatar and not worry about being too heavily scrutinized constantly as you would do over video conferencing. But then the most significant result we found was a 58% increase in closeness, in how close you felt to your colleagues. And that is an incredibly high result compared to video conferencing that I think requires a lot more investigation, requires a lot more support and a lot more highlighting, because 58%, if we can increase how people feel closer together by over 50%, by nearly 60%, by using this technology, then why aren't we using it in so many different places? Or why aren't we investigating the beginning of how we use it in organizations? And some organizations are doing that, but we should be pushing it more and more, given the evidence, the quantitative data is showing us how valuable of a remote collaboration tool it really is.
Yeah, it is incredible to see the difference between this 2D interviewing or meeting style and more immersive virtual reality, because I remember that there was additional research done into even Walmart's training facilities, and their training facilities implementing virtual reality. Originally, training had taken upwards of 8 hours due to prep and all the money that it took, down to 15 to 20 minutes. And that's an amazingly weird statistic that it's so drastic. Is another thing that increases is retention of information, because I notice from an anecdotal perspective, I do not remember a single 2D meeting I've ever had. I can remember some of the information that was exchanged, but I don't remember anybody's facial expressions, what they did. My brain just can't, if I'm playing a video game, there's a lot of stuff happening on a 2D screen, but when you're meeting with someone in 2D, it's kind of just convenience. That's the thing that's good about it.
And this is part of the return on investment case that we keep talking about in the industry. And it's return on investment from a financial perspective, it's return on investment from a time perspective, efficiencies. There are so many areas that virtual reality helps with regard to. And for years we complained that we don't have ROI data. Where is the ROI? We wanted numbers and all that. And through digging actually into the history of the technology, very quickly around the military's usage of the tech, even in World War II, they were using what was called dome trainers. So these kind of like a dome projection system. You went into this physical dome structure, made of concrete usually, and they would have this projection system. And effectively, it was a system that allowed gunners, like pilots or anti-aircraft gunners, to practice their training there.
Right.
And so you'd have this projection system. It would fire off the light into a mirror. The mirror would project the plane onto the interior of the dome, and then the gunner could practice, firing on the enemy aircraft. When the military introduced that, and they introduced it all over the world, I think there were approximately 300 of these sites in Newfoundland, in Australia, in the UK, and so many different places around the world. And the return on investment, even back then, I found a newspaper clipping from the military in the UK claiming that the implementation of this system had saved them millions of pounds. And so I thought that was amazing. We had ROI data, 60, 80 years ago. And so we complained, this whole idea of complaining about lack of ROI data I don't think is true.
Right.
And I was chatting to people about this, and it's not the lack of ROI data, it's the lack of the ability to execute on that, and the lack of widespread nature of that data. And of course, the hardware still needs to improve to convince a lot of stakeholders, and the software. So we will get there, and things are improving incredibly. But the lack of ROI point is an absolute falsity that we should just discard now. It's not about a lack of ROI data. There's loads of ROI data in the market.
Absolutely. And that's the important thing, is we need to start turning people towards the actual data that provides evidence of the retention of information, that ROI, the investment that pays off so much, whether it be engagement for employees or students. Or this is really, truly amazing. And if people want to find that study and find more information about it, where can they go?
So to find out more of the study, in fact, actually, to find out a lot of this information, including the talks I've done to date, probably best to go to my website. So that's jeremydaltonxr.com. So that's JeremyDaltonXR.com.
Excellent. Well, Jeremy, always a pleasure to talk to you. This has been fantastic, and I hope I see you at one of the many parties that they're having.
The pleasure is all mine, Max,
absolutely.
and I'll probably see you tonight at the after party.
Yes, that's right. You can see how bad I am at bowling. Awesome. Thank you, Jeremy.
Been a pleasure. See you, Max.